The latest headlines are just a tap away with Fox News Talk on TuneIn. When news breaks, get up-to-the-minute coverage on developing stories from around the world. Plus, hear all the Fox shows you watch on your TV. Listen to Fox News Talk around the clock on TuneIn.
All right, Boeing bouncing. That was on the mic, Stephanie. Boeing bouncing back this hour, sitting around session highs. A number of headlines are out. Here we go. Ready? Here we go on Boeing. Deliveries nearly halved in the first 9 months of the year. Plus, the Wall Street Journal reporting friction between the U.S. and European regulators may delay getting the 737 MAX back in the air. That's not all. Boeing also being sued by Southwest Airlines pilots. They claim that grounding has cost them $100 million plus in lost pay due to canceled flights. Boeing calls the suit meritless and is fighting all that lawsuit and everything else. Stephanie, here's, I guess, the upside. You own Boeing. You have for a while. 3 pretty harsh and negative stories, and the stock's only down 0.3%. You find comfort in that? Or are you just sick of talking about Boeing?
Kind of sick of talking about it. But, I mean, it's up 16% on the year. The way people are talking about it, it sounds like it's down 50% on the year. And honestly, I think it's just a matter of they have to get this plane back in the air. And when they do, that's when they're going to generate $30 billion in free cash flow. And that's the number that we're waiting for. But we don't have a time. I think it's going to happen between now and the end of the year. That's what the company is backing. I think at the very least it's the FAA getting that. If it's not the other regulators, I'd be surprised because they've been working with the other regulators for a very long time.
It's tough, and I'm just going wildly. What if it's longer or never happens?
It's not going to never not happen. No, absolutely not. I mean, they've already
Can we never say never?
They've already flown this plane 200 hours.
They have.
Yes. So, and no one's talking about that. So, and there's been no problem.
You just did on national television.
There you go. Thank you for giving me that opportunity.
Now you're not so sick of talking about Boeing. See how it works?
Now she likes it.
Now she loves Boeing. She's owned it forever.
It's a big position. It's just very controversial, and you kind of pick your spots.
It is. Good stuff. All right, Boeing there. Sticking by it. On deck, someone put the order in for Domino's stock. Shares making a huge turnaround today. We're going to tell you why, what happened, and a debate on the restaurant stocks and Domino's and a turn you have got to see. Stick around.
So, ServiceNow put your workflows in the cloud, huh?
We could play epic music, or we could speak in an overdramatic tone, or even set off fireworks. But that's just not smarty. Instead, we let our offer do the talking. Right now, you can grab 25% off our unlimited data SIM. That's just $18.75 a month with no speed restrictions, no credit check, and no long contract to tie you in. Now that's smarty. Just search Smarty Mobile and switch today. It's easy. Offer available for a limited time only. See smarty.co.uk for terms.
Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October. Brexit will bring changes that affect businesses in many ways, particularly if you buy from EU suppliers, sell to EU customers, provide services to EU clients, and receive customer data from other businesses in the EU. Businesses need to prepare. Find out how at gov.uk/Brexit. Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October.
Watford, it's chilly outside, and you're staying in with your feet up, and they can stay up. Because with Hive Active Heating, you can set the perfect temperature without even lifting a finger.
Alexa, ask Hive to boost my heating.
And by never having to heat an empty home, you could save up to £120 a year on your heating bill.
Alexa, play my Nice and Toasty playlist.
Search Hive Heating to buy now. Hive services require broadband and Wi-Fi. Terms apply.
From the TuneIn Studios, I'm Fonseca with your daily sports update. Remind you, Thursday night football is happening this week. 8:20 p.m. Eastern is kickoff. We've got the New York Giants at the New England Patriots. Now, to find it, search NFL, favorite your team so you don't miss any of the action.
The under center on the retreat, dropping back. He's pressured. He rolls right. He throws it down the right side for an open Bolden. Catches the 5. Into the end zone. Touchdown.
Make sure to favorite your team and search NFL. That way you don't miss any of the games. That's your TuneIn Sports Update.
It's Liz Hernandez with your TuneIn Music News Update. Kelsey Ballerini and Halsey are doing a CMT Crossroads together. And not surprising since Kelsey posted clips of them doing karaoke. They're taping the episode on October 11th and it'll air early next year. Speaking of country collaborations, Tim McGraw posted a video on Instagram of what looks like him and Shy Carter rehearsing in an empty arena. They're on stage performing their new song, Way Down. To hear music from Kelsey Ballerini and Tim McGraw, search Country Roads on TuneIn.
All right, outside of today's turn, Domino's Pizza shares, well, they've gone cold. The once hot stock has fallen 25% in the past year over slowing earnings. That's one of the reasons anyway. But not all is lost for the food and restaurant stocks. According to Piper Jaffray's 38th annual Taking Stock with Teens survey, food, general category, continues to be the #1 category for teen spending. But first, let's talk about, can we do an intraday chart of DPZ,
awesome.
Domino's? Yes. This morning, people literally throwing Domino's on the trash heap.
Yep.
What a turn. What happened?
Yep. Well, they threw it out. This one looked like, death this morning, Brian, even though they didn't miss by that much. But then all of a sudden, they made a bunch of announcements, and they had some positives on cutbacks of CapEx and various other expense-related items. This really lit the fuse. And then I think they caught a lot of shorts down there at the bottom because it is just screaming to the upside. It's up, I think, $12 right now. Looking at that chart where you see it bottoming this morning, that was maybe the gift that you had. I'm not saying I bought that bottom. I did not. I'm just saying that is a heck of a turn.
Yeah, and food continues to be teens, and most of this, by the way, is Gen Z. Mm-hmm. Teens' #1 wallet priority, 23%. Starbucks maintains a double-digit share. Even though Starbucks has been around a while, the youth like Starbucks. Should we, as investors?
Too expensive for me.
Okay.
Stock's trading at 30 times.
The coffee or the stock?
Both.
Both.
Yeah.
But I'm a fan of the product.
Yeah. We just sold it. I mean, we own Starbucks.
You sold Starbucks?
We did. We sold Starbucks. We also sold Costco. I mean, these consumer stocks have really had a tremendous run. And they're selling at 23 times earnings and or more, or up to 30 times earnings. Yeah. Costco's 34. And if you look at Google, Facebook, Apple, these are cheaper stocks with more growth, and the market hasn't liked them.
Okay, by the way, the #1 restaurant among teens surveyed? Chick-fil-A, private company, but #1. There. All right, Domino's CEO Rich Allison will be on with Jim tonight on Mad Money for an exclusive interview. I bet he has something to say about the quarter and that turn, of course, 6 p.m. Eastern time. Quick news alert here with Julia Vorston in L.A. Julia, what do you got?
That's right. Facebook portal announcing that its devices now support workplace voice and video calls. This news sending shares of Zoom, which is an office video chat service, down further. It's now down over 4.5%. It was already down about 2.5% before this. So that news that those Facebook devices, the portals, will be effectively going into competition with Zoom, having an impact on that stock. Facebook shares look like they're down just fractionally on this, on today's trading. Guys, back over to you.
Julia, thank you very much. Guys, we have 15 seconds. One word answer. Stephanie Ling, final trades.
Crystal Myers.
That's 2.
Blackstone.
XLY, consumer discretionary.
XEC.
Cisco, it's down. It's going to go higher.
Good stuff. Guys, you made it happen. Thank you very much. By the way, I'll see you back here tomorrow.
Oh, hey.
I hope. That does it for the halftime report. The Exchange with Kelly begins right now.
Thank you, Brian. Hi, everybody. Here's what's ahead. A major turning point. Will the battle between the NBA and China be the event that makes companies finally say enough? And what happens if U.S. businesses stop backing down to China? We'll discuss. And a battle on both sides of the Atlantic for Boeing. European regulators say they aren't ready to sign off on the 737 MAX. And here at home, the pilots are saying pay up. We've got both sides of this news covered for you. And it's good to be #1, except when you're #1 on the brand's no longer worn list. We'll tell you who it is now and who's on the opposite side. But before all that, we begin with today's markets. And Seema Modi here with the state of play. Seema?
Hi, Kelly. Yeah, just 2 days till those trade talks kick off in D.C. And this uncertainty on whether a trade deal will be made is rising. That's what's weighing on stocks today. Although we've recovered a bit for the Dow, down 181 points. We were down 338 points at the lows, a 1% decline for the Nasdaq. A number of those semiconductor stocks are trading lower. Technology and industrials, in fact, companies that are affected by the outcome of those trade talks are notably lower. Want to point your attention to shares of United Rentals, UBS, downgrading the stock today, citing weak demand. And you can see the stock is down by 4%. Ingersoll Rand, Honeywell, and 3M also lower as well. Chinese tech stocks have come under pressure just in the last 2 hours. Take a look at Alibaba, JD.com, Baidu, sitting on losses of around 1 to 3%. In fact, with today's move, Alibaba now down about 7% in the last 1 month as those high-level trade talks are set to resume on Thursday. Kelly, back to you.
Okay, Seema, thanks very much, and welcome to the Exchange, everyone. I'm Kelly Evans. Let's get straight to the topic dominating today's markets. It's China. Again, while the country's delegation is in Washington trying to hammer out a trade deal, a different narrative is taking hold outside the Beltway, and it's the cost of doing business in China. The NBA scrambling to defuse a backlash here at home after it seemingly apologized for a pro-Hong Kong tweet from one of its general managers. Will the public outrage turn the tide away from companies backing down in favor of U.S. businesses standing up to China? For more, I'm joined by Jude Blanchette, the Freeman Chair in China Studies at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, and Jeff Moon is president of China Moon Strategies and former assistant U.S. trade rep to China. It's great to have you both here. Jeff, I'll start with you. Is this some kind of turning point, given the backlash that we've seen by the public here to what the NBA has done this week?
I think this very well may be a turning point in our trade discussions with China. For the first time, politics, rather than just economics, are front and center in the trade discussion. It's both the NBA discussion and the discussion about sanctions on Chinese companies doing business in Xinjiang. And previously, and in previous administrations, we separated political issues out from the trade issues, because once you start linking these, it gets much more difficult for you to get to a resolution. So this is something different, and it is going to complicate the trade discussions.
And Jude, I certainly don't blame any businesses, the NBA, the litany of U.S. companies with a big presence in China. It looked very hopeful there, even just 5, 10, or 15 years ago. But it's taken an authoritarian turn under President Xi. So what should businesses do now when they're confronted with existing spending and programs? And now, of course, with the Hong Kong protests, which are really what ignited all of this, a very difficult position to try to take or not take.
Yeah, I mean, this is something companies have been dealing with for decades when operating in China, is you try to find a way to operate in the country with these extraordinary political sensitivities, and when you inevitably trip over them, you very quietly try to walk it back. But obviously this is a new paradigm, and we're talking about a company which is at the very center of American culture, and so is having these growing pains very, very publicly. I think, as Jeff was just saying, I do think this is a paradigm shift here. It's going to be very difficult for major U.S. brands now, which are operating in this context of deteriorating U.S.-China relations, to be handling these things quietly, especially with the role of social media and public scrutiny here. So I think what this means is the old political risk model of how you handle these crises is going to have to undergo a fundamental change, and one that is aware of all the multiplying, tripwires here, which are increasing at a rate that even those of us who operate in China for a long time can't keep track of.
Right, and again, it's one thing for people to understand that China's, has its issues, like many countries, obviously, where people do business. There's similar problems, but with these Hong Kong protests, now you have a pretty clear-cut issue, a pro-democracy one, where they say these were freedoms we were promised and not given. It's pretty hard to not support them, frankly. They're appealing directly to the U.S. When you look at the companies who have backed down for intentionally or unintentionally slighting China, which grows by the day. This week alone, we have Activision, Blizzard, Vans, the shoe company, Tiffany. I mean, in many cases, Jude, they're not even meaning to offend the Chinese, and yet when the moment that they're told, hey, we don't like this, they back down. Do you think those companies will stop doing that, or is that never going to be the case?
No, because if you think about it, and I think even from the NBA's perspective, the price you pay in the United States for backing down to China is simply a week of Twitter opprobrium, whereas the price you pay in China is possibly the fundamental loss of market access. So I think the calculation in many ways for many companies won't shift. They'll get smarter about kowtowing, but still, until that calculation changes, you want to quietly apologize and do your best to mend the rift.
And Jeff, where does this, so not only, by the way, are there plenty of people here at home who would take issue with that and say, well, wait a minute, we shouldn't put up with this any longer. We want you to take a stronger stand. Or maybe Google's approach looks wise here when they left altogether. That all being said, and as the business world contemplates what to do now going forward, what does it mean for these high-level trade talks between the U.S. and China, which are coming from an administration, ironically, that has been very hands-off in trying to spread freedoms throughout the world?
Right, it does complicate things. There is a window of opportunity, really, between now and I would say when the Iowa caucuses start on February 3rd to reach some kind of an agreement. The Chinese are signaling that they are not prepared to address the core industrial issues, which means that any deal would need to be some kind of a small deal. President Trump says that he doesn't want that kind of deal, but there are things that could be done to improve the situation. The Chinese are making purchases. The U.S. could grant some non-national security licenses to Huawei. There is progress that can be made, but I think that the possibility of a comprehensive deal is far into the future.
Yeah, and looking further every day. All right, guys, thank you. Appreciate it. Jeff Moon and Jude Blanchett joining me on that today. And we want you to weigh in. From the NBA to Tiffany and Gap, U.S. companies have bowed down to political pressure from China in exchange for doing business there. Is that the right move? Yes, you can say it's the cost of doing business there, or no, they shouldn't compromise their values. Head on over to CNBC The Exchange on Twitter to vote. Stocks, meanwhile, are sliding today as optimism sours about those trade talks, which are set for Thursday. The president saying yesterday a big trade deal with China is now unlikely as the delegation from Beijing looks to limit the scope of negotiations. So how should investors prepare for this? Let's bring in Michael Schumacher. He's global head of rate strategy at Wells Fargo Securities, and Marianne Montaigne, portfolio manager at Gradient Investments. So, Michael, especially the way that bond yields have acted lately, we're still down in the 1.5% kind of range in the U.S. There's a lot of jitters out there. Does that mean we've priced in the reality that there's probably not going to be any major trade breakthrough with China coming?
It's probably getting close, Kelly, and I think you hit the nail on the head with jitters. That's what it means for markets. It means volatility, whether it's China, whether it's Iran, whether it's Turkey, impeachment, Brexit, you name it. This is just a laundry list of stuff, frankly, that for investors is very difficult to assess. And listening to the prior guests saying, well, probably not a big deal yet, maybe next year, doesn't bode too well. So I would say volatility seems like it's here.
What happens, Marianne, if the big trade deal never comes? I do think people are saying, well, and this even is a tweet coming from the Chinese side, from Hu Xijin of the Global Times, saying it's going to be these ongoing trade talks, but no real trade deal. And what if that's the status quo for years to come?
Well, I guess we just probably continue as we are today. I mean, we're pricing in no trade deal, when they said that they're going to go from possibilities in these next trade talks to quick exit. The market today is pricing in no trade deal and not anytime soon. So I think we just continue operating in the same way that we're doing today.
Do you change any of your specific investments knowing that deal might be less likely now?
No, I think we've got, our focus on going into the fourth quarter, some retailers that, would get help if there was a trade agreement, but we're not factoring that into our earnings estimates at this point. And we're really focused on the U.S. consumer, particularly the low end of the, income period. It's a very large low end of the income pyramid that is getting the majority of the wage gains, and they have a higher propensity to consume. Mm-hmm. And so there's going to be greater purchases at that low end, and that's why we like Dollar General and Five Below here. Okay, Michael, meanwhile, we're going to hear from Fed Chair Jay Powell in about an hour and a half. What is your expectation now for more rate cuts? And does if we're less likely to get some big trade deal, does that mean we're more likely to keep getting lower interest rates?
Yeah, we've got one more rate cut this year, Kelly, and also one next year. But for the Fed, it's new territory. And you go back to Powell's comments at Jackson Hole, he said there's really no precedent for the current situation. Think about that comment. This is the chairman of the Federal Reserve, no precedent.
Is he referring directly to the trade issues?
He was, that's right. Yeah, so I suspect the situation in his eyes probably has gotten a bit worse, a bit more challenging. So we look at that and say, gee, it's awfully tough for investors, it's tough for traders, it's also tough for policymakers.
Well, let me ask you something. Does it make sense, especially if this is a longer-term conflict now between the U.S. and China, where the tariffs are likely to stay in place for some time? Does it make sense for the Federal Reserve to be cutting rates in response to that when it does? It slowed the economy a little, but the consumer is still very strong. Housing has been a little bit on the uptick lately. I mean, is this the right policy response to what may be a long-term breakup here?
It's a great question. The Fed's been talking about taking out insurance cuts. So the Fed consistently has said, whether it's Powell or the other leaders, that the base case for the economy is pretty good, and it's worried about these cross currents. So trade is probably cross current number one. It is in our eyes anyway. So the Fed, in our belief, gets probably a little bit more motivated to cut, frankly, given some of the disruption over the last few days. But Is that enough to push it toward 2 cuts this year? Frankly, we doubt it.
Right. Granted, there was some soft inflation data this morning,
Right.
maybe kind of feeds into that. Marianne, do you think rate cuts make sense here?
I think we have 2 choices. We could just get this October 1 and be done, or we could fall into, a widening decline in growth overseas and be in for a number of rate cuts next year. I don't think we can tell at this point, and I'm going to favor the one and done right in here.
All right. Thank you both. Appreciate it today. Michael Schumacher, Marianne Montaigne, and as I mentioned, we'll hear from Fed Chair Jay Powell next hour. Coming up, Boeing's woes also continue here and abroad. There's friction between European and U.S. regulators that's heating up, and it could delay the return of the 737 MAX. We'll bring you all those details. Boeing also facing the wrath of Southwest Airlines pilots who are suing it for more than $100 million. We'll speak with the head of their union about that next. And the stock is among today's top losers in the Dow. It's made a little bit of a comeback, I should say, but still down 0.2%. Bigger decliners today include J.P. Morgan and Cisco, down more than 2%. The exchange is back after this.
This is The Exchange on CNBC.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and Be Unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
NFL fans, hear every live game on TuneIn Premium. This Thursday, hear the home and away call as the second-place NFC East New York Giants visit the first-place AFC East New England Patriots at 8:20 p.m. Eastern.
It is long enough, and it is good!
At home or on the go, hear the home and away call of every NFL game this season on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
ESPN Radio and TuneIn just go hand in hand. Hi, this is Mel Kiper Jr. reminding you that all of your favorite ESPN radio shows and events are right here on TuneIn. Just search ESPN Radio to begin enjoying today.
MLB is right here on TuneIn.
A swing and a drive to right field. That's it. Well, Ramirez back, and that ball's gone.
And to find it all, you need to search MLB on TuneIn.
By the wall, out of here.
Home and away calls are a click away on TuneIn Premium.
It's Liz Hernandez with your TuneIn Music News Update. Kelsey Ballerini and Halsey are doing a CMT Crossroads together, and not surprising since Kelsey posted clips of them doing karaoke. They're taping the episode on October 11th, and it'll air early next year. Speaking of country collaborations, Tim McGraw posted a video on Instagram of what looks like him and Shy Carter rehearsing in an empty arena. They're on stage performing their new song, Way Down. To hear music from Kelsey Ballerini and Tim McGraw, search Country Roads on TuneIn.
You're listening to TuneIn, where you can hear all the audio you love in one place. Live NFL games, the hottest music, breaking news, and podcasts. Push play and go about your day, only on TuneIn.
Welcome back. Boeing's woes continue today. The Wall Street Journal reporting there's friction between U.S. and European regulators that could delay the 737 MAX's return to service. It appears European regulators are pushing for more tests. Joining me now is Andrew Tangle. He's the co-author of this piece in the Journal today. Andrew, what can you tell us? What seems to be the hang-up here?
Well, the European regulators want more and more testing of part of a fix that Boeing has been working on with the FAA since earlier this year. It's not directly related to the MCAS flight control system that's been implicated in the 2 737 MAX crashes.
Okay.
But it has to do with how the MAX's 2 flight control computers work together in tandem to add redundancy should there be a computer chip malfunction in flight. The Europeans have been asking a lot of questions, and as we reported, they would like some additional risk scenarios to be tested, and it's causing some frustration because it's not clear what exactly are the measures that would allay their concerns.
Right, or how long would this take? Most importantly, Andrew, how big of a delay are we talking?
That remains to be seen. Boeing and the FAA have said, there's no clear, timeline, and Boeing has said it's really in the hands of regulators. Now, we know that the FAA and Boeing have informally sort of been targeting early November, early fourth quarter, which we're now in, for the ungrounding order to be issued. But the FAA is concerned about geopolitics and working with other world regulators to unground the MAX in unison so that passengers and airlines can have confidence in the work that Boeing and the FAA have been working on to fix the MAX's flight control system. So the FAA would like the European regulators to come along with them, and it remains to be seen when the FAA's European counterparts are going to agree with the technical aspects of the fix and also the related sort of training and other matters that come along with it. So it could be a matter of weeks or months, but it really has yet to be seen if EASA is going to change its position and come on board with the FAA.
Yeah, not to mention, like you said, it could set an industry-wide precedent for foreign authorities second-guessing determinations by the FAA. So lots more ramifications to come. Andrew, thanks very much. Andrew Tingle from the Wall Street Journal with the latest on that skirmish. Meanwhile, the grounding of the Boeing 737 MAX has also turned into a legal issue here, with the Southwest Airlines Pilots Association suing Boeing over misrepresentations and lost wages. For more on the move, I'm joined by John Weeks. He's president of the Southwest Airlines Pilots Association. John, what specifically do you fault Boeing with here regarding the 737?
Kelly, hi, good afternoon. We didn't take the action lightly. We were in talks with Boeing for over a month, and because the magnitude of the losses keep piling up, we had no choice but to file the action right now, and Boeing was responsible for producing an airworthy airplane that our pilots and Southwest Airlines could make income off of, and as we all know now, that's probably even further delayed.
So do you fault them for sort of mishandling the development of this plane? I mean, I understand that is the core issue which hangs over the entire delay, but at the same time, how do you expect to get an answer on that?
Well, Kelly, when we relied on Boeing to produce a product to us, all the way back from when we were negotiating our contract, and everybody's heard of MCAS, and there's been surprises along the way. We were never informed what MCAS existed, much less you can't train what's not in the book. And even when we sent our representatives up to Boeing in the development process for the training, there was no mention of that. So MCAS, as we know it, it doesn't exist. It's being designed out of the airplane now, but the fact was Boeing was responsible for producing an airworthy airplane that we could make income off of, and that hasn't happened, and I'll be glad to shed a little light, too, on the timeline, if you'd like, as we go further in the interview.
Well, that's also interesting, but people should be aware, if they're not already, that Southwest uses, I believe, almost exclusively Boeing 737 aircraft, and so this plane is extremely important to the ambitions, including for adding that Hawaii route in particular. Can you tell us, though, what the impact has been on individual pilots from this grounding in terms of hours lost, wages lost?
You bet. The figure is $115 million starting on May 1st through the end of this year, December 31st, 2019. And when the MAX was grounded, the MAX was about 4% of the Southwest fleet, 34 aircraft. By the end of the year, that was scheduled to be 58 aircraft, or roughly 8% of the fleet. And you mentioned Hawaii. We've been delayed from some of our San Diego and Los Angeles service because we haven't been able to have the MAX in an airworthy condition and have it be flying. So the inventory that the MAX was scheduled to fly between May and December. That's how we got to that number. And that inventory has just been removed from our ability to make income.
Right. When we had the CEO of Boeing on a few months back, we did ask him if he thought that plane would be back in the air by the end of this year, and he said yes, with the caveats about safety and so forth. It's obvious that's unrealistic now. What happens if this drags out beyond, say, the first quarter of next year, and we start getting into March and April? What then?
Well, I think you'll have exponential outliers in factors coming to everybody, the airlines, passengers, obviously our pilots. What's important, I think, for the passengers to remember is they're going to hear lots of discussions on this, obviously, as we go through the next few months. But we represent the pilots of SWAP, and we treat it as a passage, not a customer. A passenger, we give a lot more reverence to the term passenger, and what they need to know is they have our word on this, and we have their back. So when we say it's ready to go, it'll be ready to go, and we will be on the forefront of actually the flight simulator testing. That is what has to happen first to get what Andrew was speaking of earlier in this segment. And so we were told that the simulator testing would probably start end of October. We've gotten no word on that. Okay. And then after that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so it just sounds like that the slipping timeline is a big part of this grievance, understandably. John, thanks very much for joining me.
Kelly, you're welcome. In behalf of all of us at SWAP, we know it's an exciting time for you and your family, and all the best.
Thank you, sir. I won't be getting on a plane for the next few weeks. I appreciate it very much.
You're welcome. Take care.
Thank you, you too. John Weeks is president of the Southwest Airlines Pilots Association. And for all the headaches and the drama that have plagued Boeing over the 737 MAX, investors don't seem overly concerned. The stock is still up 15% year to date. That's on par with the major averages, and it's still up 44% in the past 2 years. Coming up, the teens have spoken. Piper Jaffray's latest teen survey is out, and it's not good news for several retailers. We'll tell you where Gen Z is no longer spending. Plus, the surprising weapon being deployed to save America's eroding shorelines, and with it, billions of dollars worth of coastal real estate. The Exchange is back in 2.
Hearing is an underrated miracle. Intimate whispers, the lushness of symphonies, the soothing patter of rain on leaves. If you had that taken away from you, it would be a massive loss for most of us. Almost all of us go every day without really stopping to think about just how important it is to us.
Audible presents The Body, a guide for occupants, written and read by Bill Bryson, including original bonus material exclusively available at Audible. Listen free as part of your 30-day trial, $7.99 a month after 30 days, renews automatically.
Will cancer affect my sex life?
Your sex drive can disappear. The side effects may stop you.
Sex life can easily stay.
When you search one question about cancer, you end up with millions of results which contradict each other. For clear and uncomplicated information, come to Cancer Research UK. Visit us online or give us a call on 0808 800 40 40. Cancer Research UK. Together, we will beat cancer.
It's going to be a bit chilly today. And with the worst of winter yet to reach London, you don't want to come home to a broken boiler. We're with you. So that's why with British Gas Home Care, we've got your boiler covered 365 days a year. We have thousands of engineers on hand to help get your boiler up and running again, and all from just 46p a day. Buy selected home care products online by the 28th of October and get 1 month free. Search British Gas Home Care. Conditions apply. Prices vary by postcode.
Vitality Health Insurance.
Oh, hi. Is it true if I join Vitality I get de facto 5-star rated cover, can speak to a GP 24/7, get rewarded for staying active with things like Starbucks coffee, get a little sausage dog to live with me, and you could beat my current premium by up to 10%?
Absolutely. Except one of those.
It's the dog, isn't it?
Yeah.
Time to review your health insurance. Just search Vitality Health. Vitality. Positively different. Minimum monthly premiums, terms and conditions apply.
From the TuneIn Studios, I'm Fonseca with your daily sports update. Major League Baseball Division Series continues. We've got Game 4. The Astros at the Rays. That's at 4:15 p.m. Eastern. The Houston leads 2-0 right now.
Our best games that we've played during the postseason, we strung at bats together, and that's trying to put up a good at bat for the next guy. If we keep continuously putting up good at bats, the next guy will come through. When we have that mindset, we're a really, really, really good offense.
Find this game, search MLB, and favorite your team. That's your TuneIn Sports Update.
Welcome back to the exchange. Let's get you a check on these markets. The Dow is down 330 at the lows. We've come a ways off that. We're down 140 right now. That's a 0.5% drop. And the Dow is actually outperforming. The S&P is down about 0.8% or 24 points right now. And the NASDAQ down 0.9% or 72 points, and it's back below 8,000. Take a look at the sectors. All 11 are in the red today, so it's a pretty widespread sell-off. Healthcare, financials, materials, some of the worst performers there. Healthcare down 1.4%. And take a look at the semiconductor ETFs, which are having a rough day as well with all these China trade headlines surfacing. Their worst day since late August. That includes Cree, onsemi, and NVIDIA among the worst performers today. Cree is down 4.5%. And now to Sue Herrera for a CNBC News update. Hi, Sue.
Hello, Kelly. Hello, everyone. Here's what's happening at this hour. Senator Lindsey Graham, the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, has invited President Trump's personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, to testify before his committee about Ukraine. Giuliani reportedly responded that he would consider that request. Swiss astronomer Didier Queloz says that he was meeting with other academics interested in finding new planets when a press officer interrupted to tell him he had won the Nobel Prize in Physics.
I was not expecting at all this morning. I was not really in the mood, of this, because I was in the mood of a scientific meeting, and I got this call from the University of Cambridge. I recognized the number.
He's probably in a better mood now. And the Mona Lisa is back in its original room at the Louvre Museum after 2 months of renovations put the masterpiece in a temporary location. The Louvre is preparing to open a grand exhibition later this month to celebrate the 500th anniversary of Leonardo da Vinci's death. Must see. That is the news update this hour. Kel, back to you.
Have you seen it, Sue? Have you been?
I have. It is stunning.
Is it worth fighting the crowds?
You know, you have to go off hours, and if you go off hours, it's always crowded, but it's a little less crowded if you go off hours. And recently they were like handing out tickets, like it's a timed visit.
Oh, like seeing the crown jewels or something.
Basically, yes. It's not as big. It's not as big as everybody thinks it is when you get there.
But see, now that I know, I've heard that it's small. Now I think if I ever saw it, it'd probably seem bigger than I expected.
Maybe so. You got to go at some point. It's beautiful.
We'll try. Appreciate it. Sue Herrera, thank you. Coming up, it's good to be at the top of the list, except when the list is brands no longer worn. We'll tell you which retailer has taken that crown home in the latest teen survey. Plus, Domino's stock seeing a big turnaround today on the CEO's positive commentary. About a 12 percentage point swing and counting. We'll break down what he said and if the market is right to pivot so quickly. Coming up.
Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October. If you buy items from EU suppliers or sell to EU customers, there'll be new requirements affecting businesses of all sizes. You'll need an EORI trader number and know how to make a customs declaration. You'll also need to make sure you have the right supporting documents for the goods you buy and sell. Find out more about how to prepare. Follow the step-by-step guide at gov.uk/Brexit-traders.
Hearing is an underrated miracle. Intimate whispers, the lushness of symphonies, the soothing patter of rain on leaves. If you had that taken away from you, it would be a massive loss for most of us. Almost all of us go every day without really stopping to think about just how important it is to us.
Audible presents The Body, a guide for occupants, written and read by Bill Bryson, including original bonus material exclusively available at Audible. Listen free as part of your 30-day trial, $7.99 a month after 30 days, renews automatically.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and V Unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
Jamie Theakston and Amanda Holden.
Hot breakfast. Tom Hanks is our special guest. You're either being punished or rewarded. I'll let you decide.
I did do a whole show of grease on my front lawn when I was a kid. We charged everyone 10p. We raised a £5 and I gave it to Bishop's Waltham Gymnastics Club towards a new crash mat.
Do they get the crash mat?
I mean, it took a couple more years, but yeah.
It does happen to normal people like you. You've won £20,000. Well done.
I love this game.
Hot breakfast
With Jamie Theakston and Amanda Holden. Weekdays from 6:30. Listen on your radio, global player, or smart speaker.
Play hard.
Watford, it's chilly outside, and you're staying in with your feet up, and they can stay up.
Because with Hive Active Heating, you can set the perfect temperature without even lifting a finger.
Alexa, ask Hive to boost my heating.
And by never having to heat an empty home, you could save up to £120 a year on your heating bill.
Alexa, play my Nice and Toasty playlist.
Search Hive Heating to buy now. Hive services require broadband and Wi-Fi. Terms apply.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
7 Eastern. CNBC. Get yours.
Mortgage Market Outlook. Who's buying and for how much? Revealing new data on the sector and the economy. Squawk Box, 6 a.m. Eastern tomorrow.
Welcome back. Let's catch you up on a few stories that should be on your radar today. It is time for Rapid Fire. Here to break down the headlines are Seema Modi, Bill Griffith, and Kate Rogers. Welcome, everyone. And first up is the Piper Jaffray Teen Survey, so we can figure out what Gen Z wants, because, guys, no one cares about the millennials anymore, and I love it.
Or the boomers.
Or the boomers. No, but the boomers, you got... Anyway.
You haven't cared about us for a long time.
You're hugely important.
care about you.
We do, Bill. Actually, I love this survey. I look forward to it every year. It's really, really interesting stuff.
So a couple of things to pull out for you. In shoes and apparel, check out Under Armour. They finally cracked the top 10 in preferred footwear among teens, which was their highest ranking to date. But here's the bad news. When asked what brands they no longer wear, Under Armour came in #1 by its highest proportion yet. Not a great sign for the company. I believe 21% of teens say they are no longer wearing it as of this fall's survey. Now, another brand cracking the top 10 in footwear was Crocs, which jumped up to #7 from 13 last year. I asked the group why. Here's what they tell me. Gaining in popularity because of celeb collaborations like this one. It's a set of Crocs designed by the rapper Post Malone. Now, the share price performance, that's what this all comes down to, tells you the story here. Crocs is up 50% over the past year, way outdistancing the likes of Under Armour and Nike.
And it shows you that footwear spending, despite broader teen spending on the decline because they're concerned about the economy. As Courtney Reagan points out in her story, her analysis of this survey, footwear spending on average $300 a year for teens, and it's about $60 higher for males over women. But I think, as you point out, a lot of these brands are able to reinvent what they're trying to, how they're trying to resonate with a younger audience, whether it's Crocs or even Birkenstock, which is coming back.
Yeah, I tried some Birkenstocks, and I still didn't like them. But essentially, you save $300 on footwear, because I actually want to flip ahead to talk about another one here, also from the Piper Teen Survey, which is spending on handbags and beauty products, and that has plummeted. Right. So according to the survey, teens are spending only $90 a year now on average on handbags. That's down from $197 back in 2006. That is a 50% decline, and cosmetic spending is at a 19-year low. Now, we know what's happened to Ulta stock lately, like huge turnaround there. We've talked about some of the woes for Tapestry, Capri, which owns some of these brands, but really interesting change in the guys, especially shelling out the guys are for footwear and not so much these other categories.
I found that to be especially interesting because this generation cares so much about Instagram and the generation of selfies, all of these influencers, so many of them tied to beauty, in particular Kylie Jenner. So I couldn't really quite, understand why the beauty spending was down. I did think it was interesting too that Sephora has fallen off. Ulta's still the #1 cosmetic store for all of these teens, but they're not having, I guess, as good of an experience at Sephora. And if you go into Sephora, I still will spend a lot of money there, but it's jam-packed. It seems a little less organized. You can kind of understand why.
Fortnite is starting to fade as a favored video game. These free collaborative games like Fortnite is, but video game as a category is still very solid. So they've moved on to something else. They didn't say what it was, but I found that interesting.
Yeah, any other gleanings here?
Casual fashions are growing, and we've seen that even in our own,
you mean like sweatpants
here. Well,
you mean like dressing casual at work?
Jeans as well. Yep. That was ranked high. And Nike consistently ranking high amongst teens, despite, again, spending on the decline. This is still a brand that they favor. And you look at the stock price, it's done incredibly well, up 25% this year compared to an Under Armour, which is only up about 5%. Yeah. And then a Lululemon at leisure, talk about a stock that's really been on fire, up 60% in 2019.
And Chick-fil-A.
I was going to say, non-publicly traded company. food spending, #1 category for these teens, of course, makes sense.
And Chick-fil-A is still pinned at number one.
Always #1. Yeah. Starbucks is #2. Among middle-income teens, Olive Garden actually made a reappearance, which is interesting because they're kind of to blame, these teens, for the death of casual dining, right? When I was in high school, we went to Chili's on a Friday night. These kids don't do that anymore. That's right, but now it's a different experience, different generation. But Olive Garden did make a move into the survey.
Bob's Big Boy.
What's Bob's Big Boy?
Anyone?
Bill,
okay.
Tell us more.
Sounds great.
Never mind.
Sticking with the food theme.
Old people in California are nodding their head right now. Yes.
Also loving it right now is Domino's. Check out the stock today, a huge turnaround. It was down more than 6% this morning after missing on earnings and lowering its long-term sales outlook. But then CEO Rich Allison came to the rescue on the conference call, saying there's a significant shakeout coming to the industry that will allow Domino's an opportunity to grab market share from rivals. And he's talking about the DoorDashes, about the Uber Eats of the world. He thinks that business is fundamentally unsustainable. Domino's stock is now up 5%.
Yeah, so that turned around on the conference call. Rich, very authoritative on the call. He said this is a proactive decision to change the guidance, not reactive. 2 to 3 years makes more sense for investors. They think it's a better measure than a 3 to 5-year outlook because of all of this uncertainty and because of, the pressure from these aggregators. His message, my takeaway from it was, we're not sure who's going to be here in 3 to 5 years in terms of all these aggregators. We're playing the long game at Domino's. We are on the offensive, not the defensive here, and we will be here at the end.
They lowered their domestic outlook and their international outlook, and it's one of those brands that it is in 85 countries, and they have over 10,000 stores outside the U.S. Do you have a sense, given that you covered this company, Kate, that Domino's grew too fast internationally?
Well, so it's not just international. I mean, U.S. is growing quickly as well. That's part of their strategy. We talk about it all the time. It's fortressing. It's opening up more of these locations closer to one another to get you your pizza faster. They do work with some of those aggregators via master franchisees outside of the U.S. But in the U.S., they're not partnering with the DoorDashes, the Postmates, et cetera. But
they've got their own drivers.
Yeah, and analysts say this may pressure same-store sales in the short term. In the long term, it'll be good for business, and that's what Rich was saying.
What's the allure of Domino's to begin with?
It's cheap.
No, you and
you have to ask.
Steve and I were talking about it before the show.
All right. I cover all these companies.
Is the pizza
that
good? Is the pizza that good?
Let me tell you,
I enjoy Domino's.
Or is this just about cost? The price point is a lot lower than most pizza makers. And the convenience, the fact that they were, delivering anywhere and at any time.
That's right. They have the hot spots. You can track the pizza. I think people really enjoy that feature. One more thing, though, that's interesting from the conference call. And yes, Bill, I do think the pizza's good. I also think Papa John's is good. I also think Pizza Hut is good.
Well,
all pizza
is good.
That's your beat.
Good for me. Rich also spoke a lot about the opportunity that carryout presents. There's so much focus on delivery. They're reimaging their stores. They have these kiosks in stores, and they want to continue to expand on the carryout part of the business. They think it presents a big opportunity. I think investors reacted well to that because it reminded them delivery is not the only game in town.
Yeah, I just think it's fascinating if he's right. And we've seen other companies obviously be subsidized by their private backers, come to market, not be able to make a go of it. You have a business like Domino's that could, I'm not saying they go out of business, but if the threat is there enough for long enough, it's a real headwind for them. I'm glad he thinks they can just wait it out and they're going to win and these aggregators are going to lose. But there's a lot of people on the other side of that bet, which I find super interesting. Papa John's also having a good year, by the way, up 31%.
Yeah. New CEO.
And the CEO is going to be with Jim Cramer tonight. Domino's CEO Rich Allison on Mad Money, 6 p.m. Eastern time, so he can expound even more on all of that. We look forward to hearing from him again. Now, topic 4, finally today, and one that might blow your mind if you haven't seen this yet. Scotch maker, the Glenlivet, is out with a new way to get your whiskey. Take a look.
The Glenlivet has released an original whiskey drinking experience. A collection of edible cocktail capsules made from seaweed, meaning no need for a glass to enjoy them. Pop the capsule in your mouth and take a bite to release the delicious cocktail ingredients.
I really thought this was a joke when I first saw it. By the way, the capsules are made of seaweed. They're drawing some unflattering comparisons to Tide Pods, naturally, but Bill.
The connoisseur of the group. Scotch
I am so disappointed in Glenlivet. They should know better. This commercial where it says you don't need the glass or the ice or the cocktail stirrer. There is a romance and a tradition and a ritual around enjoying a fine cocktail, and it includes all of those things. What they're talking about is how astronauts drink. I mean, what the heck is all of that about?
Students,
and then
it's obliteration culture.
They even have to say the word seaweed. I mean, is that going to get me to try one of these things?
Well, they have to make sure it's eco-friendly, so they emphasize here for the youths that it's made of seaweed and that the seaweed capsules biodegrade in 4 to 6 weeks, which is faster than a fruit peel. I was silly enough to think that people were eating the pods. So I'm just confused by the whole thing.
It's biodegradable, I believe. So you
is that
just
only
pop it into your mouth and then...
But you take then the casing out?
No, I think it's supposed to just
Doesn't
melt.
it melt?
Yeah, in your
So
mouth.
it's like those Listerine strips,
Yeah,
which are also kind of gross.
There really
So
should have been
great
a
idea.
test as part
By
of
the
this
way,
report.
this makes it more attractive, I think, to younger drinkers.
Absolutely.
But I'm talking about really younger drinkers. This is like those flavored
like candy.
vaping things, you know?
Well, you think as a young
Not a good
consumer,
thing.
you typically don't drink whiskey. It's tequila, it's beer.
Yeah, but these are
and then over
cocktails.
time,
This isn't
as
just
your
pure
palate,
scotch. These are flavored cocktails. And they look awfully attractive there in those different colors.
Like many other things that when I first saw like the Amazon Echo Dot and thought, what the heck is this? Now I'm convinced these are going to be ubiquitous. These liquid pods for all, if they can figure out how to carbonate them, yeah, then I'll be all over it.
I'm going to buy them. We're
Party
doing
at Bill's house, right? You're buying?
Pizza
Yeah.
and...
This is the real side of the apocalypse.
Come for the drinks, stay for the pods.
Thank you all. Seema Modi, Bill Griffith, and Kate Rogers. Still ahead with water levels rising and shorelines eroding. Could oysters be the answer to protect America's coastal real estate? We'll explain next.
Exploring the heart of...
Hello, Vitality Health Insurance.
Oh, hi. Is it true if I join Vitality, I get de facto 5-star rated cover, can speak to a GP 24/7, get rewarded for staying active with things like Starbucks coffee, get a little sausage dog to live with me, and you could beat my current premium by up to 10%?
Absolutely. Except one of those.
It's the dog, isn't it?
Yeah.
Time to review your health insurance. Just search Vitality Health. Vitality. Positively different. Minimum monthly premiums, terms and conditions apply.
Major League Baseball postseason is in full swing, and TuneIn Premium puts you at field level for every...
And it's a home run.
Single...
And gone.
Game.
And that gone, a home run.
With TuneIn Premium, catch every pitch of every inning of every Major League postseason game until the final out of the World Series.
0-2 pitch, little half swing, and it hit.
At home or on the road, Major League Baseball's postseason action is on TuneIn Premium.
And that ball is gone.
Upgrade today.
Hi, this is Brian Weber, host of NFL First and Goal every Sunday, kicking off at 1 Eastern only on TuneIn Premium. Be sure to listen this Sunday for the ultimate football fan experience, featuring 7 hours of commercial-free coverage of every scoring play around the NFL.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
In the dictionary, a podcast is this: a digital audio file made available on the internet, typically as a series, of which new installments can be received by subscribers automatically. But on TuneIn, a podcast is this.
I'm Adam Grant, and this is Work Life, my podcast with Ted. We study how to make work not suck.
And it's defined like this.
Blackout is a suspense-filled thriller from Endeavor Audio and Q-Code.
From news, sports, to pop culture, comedy, and beyond. Define your own podcast possibilities on TuneIn.
Welcome back to The Exchange. A surprising new weapon in the battle to protect our shores from rising sea levels and increasingly severe storms. Diana Olick has the details in her continuing series on the rising risks to real estate.
At Manhattan's iconic Gramercy Tavern, where the menu celebrates locally sourced, sustainable food, something transformational is going on in the trash. Gramercy Tavern is one of more than 70 New York area restaurants donating their wholly eaten half shells to help repopulate the oyster reefs in New York Harbor.
When I learned a little bit more about their technique, then they had me hooked.
Oyster reefs are natural barriers that protect shorelines from erosion, rising tides, and increasingly severe storm surge. They knock down the height and force of waves, but they've been decimated by a century of over-harvesting and worsening water quality.
We've seen a loss of almost 80% of oysters in estuaries worldwide.
University of North Carolina professor Antonio Rodriguez studies oyster reef growth. He says the best way to protect the billions of dollars worth of coastal real estate from the effects of climate change is to go back to nature.
The goal is to keep people safe, keep their property intact, and sometimes making your environment more natural and learning from the way the environment was before we developed it. Those are the best techniques.
Oyster reefs are now being rehabbed from Massachusetts to Texas in projects by universities, local municipalities, the U.S. Navy, and Air Force.
This is the oyster hatchery of the New York Harbor School, and it's where Billion Oyster Project grows all of our oysters.
The Billion Oyster Project is one of the most ambitious. A twist on farm to table, it's table to farm. With a $3.5 million annual budget funded in part by state and federal grants from Superstorm Sandy. It collects 10,000 pounds of discarded restaurant shells per week, brings them to Governor's Island to cure for a year, then puts them in a hatchery where they spawn oyster larvae.
So right here, you can see 2 baby oysters. Once the Sandy happened, in the aftermath of that, we realized just how valuable oyster reefs in New York Harbor could be. New York Harbor used to have over 200,000 acres of oyster reefs protecting the shoreline, and that population is virtually extinct.
So our natural barriers to storm surge are gone.
Correct.
And you're telling me that this big old pile of oyster shells is going to save us?
I don't know, save us, but it should absolutely help.
The goal is to place 1 billion live oysters across 100 acres of reefs by 2035, bag by bag. In order to receive federal funding, projects like Billion Oyster had to prove that not only were they making the shorelines more resilient, but they were creating social resilience. That is, bringing even the largest communities together to protect their own real estate.
We want to engage communities everywhere because that's actually how you get long-standing change, right? If the community and the people that live there and work there are actively involved in stewarding their local environment.
We're lucky to live and work in New York City where we have access to some of the freshest and the best, the widest variety of species anywhere in the world. But with that comes a responsibility of the choices that we make.
And Diana Olick joins me now. Great news for the insurance companies, I guess. If this works, is there any pushback or signs of that it might be more difficult than it sounds?
Yeah, absolutely. There are some roadblocks here. There are especially in the permitting and also with poachers who go after some of these transformed reefs. But in the permitting, it's interesting because you're looking at protecting some of the most expensive real estate on the coast. But part of the value of that real estate is the pristine beach, and it's being able to walk out into that soft sand and soft water. So they can only put these oyster reefs in certain spots because people don't want to go out and cut their feet and that kind of thing. So you do get some pushback on the permitting and the zoning for all of this.
Can't keep them all,
You do put them in estuaries. Yeah, you put them in certain spots, but there has been some local pushback on these.
Wow, that is super interesting. I'm going to keep my eyes out the next time I'm out on one of these sandy places. Diana, thanks very much. It's great stuff. Diana Olick there for us. Coming up, cannabis stocks down sharply in the past 2 months. Is vaping to blame or is something else going on here? We'll dig into that ahead. And there's still time to vote in our Twitter poll today. From the NBA to Tiffany and Gap, U.S. companies have bowed down to political pressure from China in exchange for doing business there. Is that the right move? Head on over to CNBC The Exchange on Twitter. The results are next.
How well does your financial advisor know you?
Get social with TuneIn. Follow TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for the latest and greatest audio happenings across the app. Explore exclusive content.
It's called Indie.
Learn about the hottest new podcasts.
The Nostalgia Mixtape, a new podcast hosted by yours truly, Savannah Shroudy.
And get alerted when the big game's about to begin.
This Sunday is Championship Sunday, when we'll find out which 2 teams are going to play for the Lombardi Trophy.
Add TuneIn to your feed and be in the know when it matters most.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn. NFL fans, hear every live game on TuneIn Premium.
This Thursday, hear the home and away call as the second-place NFC East New York Giants visit the first-place AFC East New England Patriots at 8:20 p.m. Eastern.
It is long enough, and it is good!
At home or on the go, hear the home and away call of every NFL game this season on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today. TuneIn puts you on the sideline for the 2019 college football season free all year long. With college football on TuneIn, hear the home and away call for more than 140 schools live, regular season matchups and rivalry games, conference championships and bowl games, the college football playoff.
Throwing, he's got it in a stiff arm, end zone.